I'll just give a reminder and the mini promo, I guess, of our upcoming program, September 19th to the 22nd of this year, 2025. There'll be a special presentation on the temple and tomb of Ramses III of ancient Egypt, which will coincide with the solar equinox of 2025, the one that's occurring in the fall. And it's going to cover the temple of Medinet Habu and the tomb of Ramses III, the actual tomb in the Valley of the Kings, with original hieroglyphs, translations, and explanations of the text that's related to Ramses III. It's going to commemorate the Opet festival and is being held at the same time that the actual Opet festival in ancient times would be held. And you can sign up for it at this email link. So you can type it into your browser and it will pop up. And again, it's going to be a magnificent presentation on the teachings related to Ramses III, who's come into prominence of late. So now we can go. Okay. Now to the discourse, which will be the concluding discourse in this series. And I'll read it through and then we'll discuss. And then I have two things to show regarding this passage, because Ab Amon makes some sharp comments that we all should be cognizant of, aware of. So we discussed this issue the last time of the text, the images of the divinities not coming from human passions, and how the arrangement of the text in the names of the divinities are concomitant with and preserve conceptions of the divinities. And then Porphyry enters the discussion at this point. He says some things and then Ab Amon will answer. So we'll begin here. Or, if anything else in religious legal institutions, and these are Porphyry's words, for if anything else in religious legal institutions is adapted to the gods, this must certainly be immutability. And it is necessary that ancient prayers, like sacred Asila, should be preserved invariably the same, neither taking anything from them nor adding anything to them, which is elsewhere derived. And Ab Amon answers, for this is nearly the cause at present, that both names and prayers have lost their efficacy. So what Ab Amon is saying is that what you're saying here is good, This is wonderful, but this is the reality of the situation as it is now. Because recall this exchange is occurring in the late period when the Greeks had already come into Kemet. For this is nearly the cause at present that both names and prayers have lost their efficacy, because they are continually changed through the innovation and illegality of the Greeks. For the Greeks are naturally studious of novelty and are carried about everywhere by their volatility, neither possessing any stability themselves, nor preserving what they have received from others. And this is a big point. But rapidly relinquishing this, they transform everything through an unstable desire of discovering something new. But the barbarians are stable in their manners and firmly continue to employ the same words. Hence, they are dear to the gods and goddesses and proffer words which are grateful to them, but which it is not lawful for any man by any means to change. And thus much we have said in answer to you concerning names, which though they are inexplicable and are called barbaric, yet are adapted to sacred concerns. So here, the term barbarians, Ab Amon is using this term sarcastically, because he's saying that the Greeks, and this is a very serious issue, and you can see the evidence of this in some of the temples that were built during the Ptolemaic period. The design, the architectural design of those temples are on the design of the ancient paradigm. But some of the text in those temples are not in line with the original tenet of the teachings. There are divergences, certain divergences in the text. And he's saying here, because the Greeks are naturally studious of novelty, meaning things that don't hold weight or things that don't hold great profundity. They're like multifarious things, multifarious reasoning, talking and talking and talking about all different subjects and trying to draw things out of meanings that have really no serious weight. And this is a problem for modern practitioners of spirituality. It's called salad bar spirituality, where you take a little bit of Buddhism, you take a little bit of Hinduism, you take a little bit of Kemetic, you take a little bit of Native American, you put it all together, or you add even Western religion ideas and concepts in there, and you're calling that religion, and you're calling that a spiritual system. And that invariably leads to disappointment on the spiritual path. It doesn't lead to the true goal of the mystery system. The idea is to practice the teaching in which it was prescribed by the sages. And he's saying that neither possess. This is a problem of the Greek students. Neither possessing any stability in themselves. And what he means here spiritual discipline. The lack of spiritual discipline to follow the teaching in the way it is being conveyed as he follows, preserving what they have received from others. And this is a serious problem, even for today practitioners, that the wandering mind tries to impute its own ideas on what it has received from the teachers. And in so doing, they divert from the teaching. And they therefore lead themselves to moving parts around instead of leading themselves to a higher mystical union where they leave all the parts behind. So they're shuffling things, but not leaving the shuffling. And so there are a lot of ritualistic things going on, a lot of talking. And this was happening in ancient times at this period, not in the prior period. And because of that, no real spiritual advancement is taking place. There might be more intellectual minutia going on, more intellectual additions, but no real mystic process. He says they relinquish what has been taught to them. And what that means is that when you relinquish what has been distributed by the teachers, what happens is that something has to replace it. And what replaces it is the wandering mind's own ideas and concepts, which are born from egoism. It's really egoistic ideas that is creating it, that is doing it. And because of this desire, which is an egoistic manifestation of discovering something new, because they want to say, oh, look what I did, look what I discovered, look what I found. That's what has led to colonization of the Americas, colonization of Africa, this insatiable, unstable desire of discovering something new and imposing one's own ideas as opposed to following the spiritual path that has been laid out by the sages for humanity. And nowhere you find the remnants of spiritual masters more than you do in what has been left by the Kemetic sages, the writings, the architecture, the texts. But the barbarians, he's saying, calling them barbarians, but they are stable in their manners. They have spiritual discipline and able to sit and commune with the teaching in a way that is prescribed by the sages. They have given up the wandering nature of mind to fully concentrate on the mystery in a way that reveals the hidden, unfabricated essence of being. And they firmly continue to employ the same words, meaning they don't change the text. They don't add to the text. They don't subtract from the text. And this is and you see the evidence of this today when you go to the some of the temples, the Ptolemaic temples. If you take a trip to Egypt, you can see the evidence of it if you know what to look for. The Greeks added like over 100 new glyphs. And they made extrapolations on the teachings that were divergences from the teachings. So they don't employ the same words. They deviated from the teaching. And so Ab Amon is saying what you're saying is all well and good, but this is how things are. This is how things stand today. And therefore, these people, these so-called barbarians, you're calling them barbarians, but they adhere to the gods and goddesses. Why? Because they maintain the efficacy and the integrity of the teaching by honoring the works of the sages and saints, and the teachers, the spiritual teachers, the preceptors that have laid out the teaching in such a way that leads human beings to the spiritual evolutionary process that culminates in mystic realization of the nature of being. And therefore, their proper words, which are grateful, meaning there's a mystic reciprocation. And these so-called barbarians, they offer divine service to the Neteru, the gods and goddesses. And in turn, the gods and goddesses offer them, distribute to them spiritual grace and boons that allows for their spiritual process to proceed in a harmonious manner. And the lesson for us is to be like the so-called barbarians, to be steady and firm in the practice of the teaching as it has been prescribed, and to be close. And by doing so, you open yourself to the boons and the blessings and the grace of the divinities, which further propels your spiritual evolutionary process towards mystical integration with the divinities and spiritual enlightenment. The spiritual enlightenment is an experience that a human being has. It's not knowing things with the mind and thinking. And this is some of the mistakes that the Greeks made. That they thought that intellectualism, because of the philosophical aspect of the teaching, that more philosophizing would bring about means or equates to enlightenment. And enlightenment indicates a realization that is beyond the mind. So it's beyond intellectualization. And that these so-called barbarians knew that it was not lawful to make these kinds of changes to the teaching and the philosophy, and held the names of the divinities in high regard due to the metaphysical process that brought about the names of the divinities. So they knew that it was unlawful to change these names or add to them or pronounce them in languages that was not the original language in which they were derived. And this is why Ab Amon is saying that these innovations are illegal. The illegality of the Greeks means that there's a deviation from the from the metaphysical process that brought about the theurgical process of the divine names, meaning the spiritual laws that allows for the divine names to come forth. And those spiritual laws are born in the mind through metaphysical processes that a spiritual sage goes through. And so I'll share something with you. Let's go to this papyrus paper, papyrus of Lunar. You see how you have the Anpu leading in and Anpu at the scale, and everything looks orderly. You have the divinities above, Asar in the shrine with the goddesses, with the eye of wisdom above, the mystic eye of wisdom of the goddess, only a special feather. And you see how the text is written above the divinities in very orderly fashion. And everything looks orderly and congruent. And then if we look here, this is one that was done during the later period, the Greek period. And you have certain elements. So you have the assessors, the divinities. You have Asar in the shrine with one goddess. So there's another goddess that should be here or could be here, never had. And then you have Jehuti not looking at the scale, looking away from the scale. You have Peru, so they did good here. They put Jehuti at the top. You see Heru working the scales, and his hand is on the scale, and this should be free. His hand should not be touching the scale. And you have Anpu here, and looks like he's grasping the scale as well. And then where's the text? That corresponds with this scene. See, this is an example of innovations, of changing. And here's another one, which is even more obvious. It's a later period because you can see here this person in the scene who's making an offering, but look at his dress. So you know he's from the Greek period. And not only that, you can tell it's a Greek period by how they depict the goddess behind Asar. You see the emphasis on the large breasts. You don't see that in the earlier period. And here you have the four sons of Heru looking at Asar. You should see them looking towards the scene. And you have, look at the size of the scale. And the scale is within the shrine. And the scale should be outside of the shrine. The scale outside of the shrine, Jehuti outside of the shrine. And you have the person near the scale and look like he's tampering with the scale. You can even see that it's disbalanced, the scale. This side is lower than this for whatever reason. And the main feature of this scene, and this is just one example that we're showing through the judgment scene to illustrate the point that Ab Amun is making. The main feature of the scene is the scale. Because the scale is the determiner of the fortune and the destiny of the soul. And as I said before, it's within the shrine. It shouldn't be in the shrine. But if we do this, in the earlier period, look at the size of the scale in relation to the divinities. And the feather of Ma'at, the peak of a feather are above the divinities. Because what's being weighed is truth. What's paramount is truth. So this is what Ab Amun is talking about. The divergences, the changes because of the restless mind. Then he concludes, and thus much we have said in answer to you concerning names, which though they are inexplicable and are called barbaric, yet are adapted to sacred concerns. Yeah, at this time, the insult to the tradition was already being expressed. So he's saying that you are calling them barbaric, but that they are adapted to concerns of a mystical nature, the sacredness of it, the sacredness of the names, the profundity of the names, the great mystery, the great preciousness of the names, of the Neteru, the gods and goddesses. So recall he started out talking about the names of the divinities and their how they should be understood. And he spoke about the process by which the names came about. And he just upholding the sacred nature of the teaching. And so this is the end of the discourse on Ab Amun in relation to, in this section of the text, where he says that a divinely wise muse is necessary to handle these issues that were brought about. So he spoke about superior natures, inferior beings, about intellectual interpretation, the recall of the immaterial, incorporeal, and supernatural, the impartable, all of these serious issues were spoken about. Talking about the lotus and the boat over the there are all of these serious issues. He spoke about the zodiac and the makeup, the configuration of the zodiac and why it was constructed the way it was. So do a feel for listening to this discourse on this segment of Abamun's discourse to Porphyry. So if there's a topic that you would like to have covered, you can email it to me, and we can, look at it and see if it's feasible for this process or this structure that we have on Saturday morning. So, are there any questions or any thoughts before we log off? Once again, this is coming up. It's going to be a wonderful program for us. So I don't think you want to miss this. Okay, do everyone. Till we meet again. I see something in the chat. Yes, how do we go deeper into understanding Abamun's message? So you listen to this is the 27th lecture now on this aspect. So you can go back and listen to all of these lectures again and reflect upon them and reflect in a way that will, you have to see if what he's talking about is what you're doing or not. And if you're not doing what he's talking about, how do you adjust your practice of the teaching to do what he's talking about? Are you making the same errors? Are you making changes to the teachings within yourself, within your own spiritual practice? Are you straying away from the sacred names, the divinities? Are you disregarding the deeper mystery and focusing on the parts instead of the whole, trying to attain the whole, but playing with the parts? Are you not realizing the manifestation of the universe as the nature of the divine, which is the essential nature of one's own being? So you reflect on those things. You can get the book. Sebaima published the text. It's called On the Mysteries. So you can get the book and read through that section. And it's a weighty text. So you might want to concentrate on this section that was covered because it brings everything together uh, about the teaching and how we are to approach the teaching, how we are to practice the teaching, how we are to view the gods and goddesses, and how they relate to us. So it's all there. Right? It takes lots of reflection and self-correction because some of these mistakes can be easily made because of the nature of the mind and the Ari and the ego. And so you have to be careful with how you approach the teaching. And by doing that, what you're actually doing is you're developing skill in the practice and you're enhancing your capacity to practice with discipline, irregularity, and monotony. So you have to put all those things together within yourself on a gradual basis over time. Why is it important for Jehuti to be outside the shrine in the temple artwork? Well, it's important because, and the scales of Ma'at to be outside too, Well, it's important because the shrine is where the realization occurs, and you have to have a process before you enter the realization. The final act is union with the divine, which is symbolized by Asar sitting on the shrine, sitting in the shrine on his throne, being supported by the two goddesses. So this process, the shrine is the culmination. So this symbolically represents when you enter mystical absorption with one's own true divine nature, which is a dissolution of the cognitive processes. So cognitive Juhuti is the god of intellect, and his hands represent Shai and Renan. So he has to qualify, he has to quantify, he has to make uh, qualifications for a future process to occur. That cannot happen in the absolute nature, because there's no cognitive activity there. Essentially, there's no mind. And to enter into the shrine, you have to go through the process of determining if you're qualified to enter into the shrine. So you can't be in the shrine trying to determine if you're qualified to be in the shrine. All of that has to take place outside. And if you are qualified based upon righteousness and truth, not only of your personality, but of your realization of the nature of self, if that is righteous and truthful, then you're led into the shrine by Heru. So all of this activity needs to take place outside. And how that relates to you is that all of this activity takes place in the mind on a day-to-day basis. It's taking place in your mind, your feelings, your thoughts, your emerging desires, etc. And if you are able to, if those thoughts, feelings, and desires are in attunement with mystical union, then your spiritual progress will continue. At the time of death, if there are any egoistic impediments, means that you'll return, you'll have a reincarnation. You'll not be able to go into the shrine, metaphorically, which is union with the divine. So you have to have the process before you enter into the mystic union. Okay. Okay, so this will be the last question. Did the Greeks intentionally leave out the detail where Ma'as feather was higher than the head of the Neter? In that depiction, they have and you do see it in other, you see Jehuti at the apex. So that is not wrong. What was wrong with it was the size of the scale, because the scale is the central feature of this scene, and so it should be larger. It's not the periphery or not. It's the most significant aspect because it is what is determining the nature of the scale, the nature of the heart, which is the unconscious mind. Okay, anything else? Anybody else? Okay, so do everyone. Emaha era emete. Imaha era emete. Imaha era emete. Imaha era emete. Do a album. Attack. Do everyone to meet again. Attack.